Well, it turns out the dead have no rights whatsoever. That's the first thing you got to know. So what happens to your data once you die is it depends on who's holding the information. You as an entity have no rights. Your estate might have some limited, very limited rights, but whoever owns the data, whether it be government or corporate, they have the right to either keep or dispose of your data.
This is Julia Crete. She spent her career studying who owns the records of the dead, and now the digital twin of the dead. We'll come back to her. But before we get to the digital rights of the dead, we need to discuss the living. And before you can ask who owns a model of you after you're gone, there's a stranger question already here. Who owns the model of you right now while you are very much alive? The digital twin, an AI built to think, talk, sound, decide, or simply be like one specific person. That person, of course, is you. It's sold to executives as a productivity tool, to companies as a way to scale a CEO, to the rest of us as a coach in our pocket. And a lot of us already have a rough version. If you're using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, in a sense, you might already have a digital twin. We'll be exploring all of this on today's episode of The People's AI, presented by the Vana Foundation. I'm Jeff Wilser, longtime journalist, AI strategist, host of the AI Summit at Consensus, and on this season of The People's AI, we're exploring the question that at first sounds niche and opaque, but now is surprising urgency: data portability. Why is it so easy to walk your money across the street to a new bank, but hard to move your data from platform to platform? And I'm proud to partner with Vana to tackle this topic. Vana is supporting the creation of a new internet, one rooted in data sovereignty, user ownership, and data portability. Their mission is to create a decentralized data ecosystem where individuals, not corporations, govern their own data and share the value it creates. Learn more at vana.org. But today, really, there are three questions. First, what a twin is and what it can't be. Second, who owns your twin and what are the open legal and ethical questions? And third, where's all of this going? But let's start with the simplest core question. What the hell is a digital twin actually, and why would anyone want one? Even the term digital twin is fraught and kind of squishy. It has been stretched so far it's nearly lost its shape. It began with machines, a live virtual replica of a jet engine or a factory fed enough sensor data to mirror the real thing in real time. Now, that has real uses, it really does. The idea traces back to NASA. During Apollo 13, ground crews used mirrored simulators to the spacecraft to work out how to get the crew home. The first digital twin existed to keep someone alive. Now, hold on to that. There's a medical version too. A simulated organ, a simulated body. But today, we're really focused on the third kind of twin, the personal twin, a model not of an engine or an organ, but of a particular person. And the loaded word hanging over all of it, the one to start with, is clone, a digital clone. But oftentimes, even the people building digital twins hate the word clone.
No one wants to start with a clone. Okay, it's just like that just opens a can of worms and various associations, which are either positive or negative, but almost always a distraction from what this technology can actually be used for.
This is Natalie Mombiet, and she'd known exactly how much of a distraction the clone can be. She co-founded one of the first AI avatar startups, Our One, and worked on Reid Hoffman's digital avatar. For a while, the best known proof that the technology worked at all. Now she's building custom AI twins for executive. And she has watched this go from magic deepfake party trick to something with an actual job.
I think a really great place to start is, what are you trying to solve for, right? And what are you struggling with? Actually, one of the earliest use cases is around training. So that's what a lot of the AI avatar companies, the kind of like the first cohort of those, did really well with, was basically turning static training content into more engaging avatar, kind of human-led.
Describe what that looks like. So a new employee gets to work, and instead of either watching videos or in the old days, like actually reading things or even having an FAQ. They interact with the CEO of the company.
So in the very first instance, it is just one-way video, right? It's just like, this is more engaging than the PDF that it was based on. You can basically take the PDF and feed it into the avatar platform, and then suddenly you get a generic avatar or an avatar that's based on certain personas within a company, which are now delivering that content. The idea being like, oh, I'm much more receptive to watch, to seeing somebody actually tell me what it is I need to learn. And so that's one step, that's kind of a big step up from what you get from reading or not reading a PDF. So that is sort of table stakes. We've kind of moved on from that because avatars can now be, or these digital twins can now actually be interactive. I think we are getting to this point where we can really narrow the use case to solve something that somebody really needs solved, like the case of onboarding or, so keeping people updated with, the ever-changing company handbook, right? Or just things that people need to know. Communication, one of the CEOs I'm working with, he's like, communication is, singularly the hardest thing in a company of a certain size. And if we can use this type of technology to help solve some of those communication issues, standardize communication, but allow it to be personalized, right? So it's basically everyone or anyone can engage with this digital twin and get the information they need in that moment. But that body, that training data is up to date with what needs to be known.
So that's a twin as a product, something a company buys. But Natalie's bigger point lands closer to home.
I think what a digital twin is today and is evolving into is quite different from what we imagined it was at the beginning, which was basically, here is an artifact. It looks like you, it's there, and that's what it is, right? And it's basically, you tell it what it needs to say, and that's it. Whereas now, like, what do you call, if you're a heavy user of Claude or whatever your platform of choice is? I mean, that's my digital twin. My digital twin for different things. Like, I've got a digital twin for writing, my writing skills, right? Or my writing evals that I have within Claude. All of these things kind of add up to being a digital version of me. And if you want to put a face on it, great. And if you want to make it available to others, great. These are kind of like product and use case decisions. But I think that we are all, for those of us, and I'm a solo entrepreneur, a solopreneur, and I'm using my digital twin or my digital twin infrastructure, mostly within Anthropic, to like create outsized impact for me. So I'm using it for automations, I'm using it for writing, I'm using it to basically scale myself and make myself a lot more impactful without having to hire anybody or, necessarily engage a human being in all the ways that I would have needed to before. So I think that is how broadly to think about like what this technology, which is now seeping into kind of any AI that you heavily customize to you and make work for you.
The twin feels like a 2025 idea, but it's not. People were building convincing ones before the tools were any good. The idea goes back for a while.
So very fast, how I got into the AI space was for philanthropic reasons. Back in 2011, we decided to sponsor constructions of 13 classrooms and schools in Afghanistan for education to women.
This is Francesco Rulli. He runs Querlo. He's an early digital twin pioneer, and he got into AI, of all things, through philanthropy. From classrooms in Afghanistan, Francesco's path bends somewhere you wouldn't guess, building digital twins of historical figures. Michelangelo, the David, and Christopher Columbus. And as an aside, he is one of the first people I learned about twins from years ago. Francesco is an OG in the best sense, and we've spoken numerous times over the years.
2016, we had some problems dealing with the local authorities. And that's when we decided to replace the teachers in Afghanistan with the chatbots. And we started with deterministic chatbots. conversations were in Pashtun and Farsi, local languages. And then we decided to expand this into a real business. So in 2017, we started working with clients internationally, both in the United States, Europe, and the Middle East. And it became a business for us. But everything we have done in AI always started from an educational perspective. So when we came across the Cathedral of Florence, the Duomo of Florence, Monsignor Verdon, who's actually an American, but he's in charge of the museum of the Florence Cathedral, we decided together to build the digital twin of Michelangelo so that he could actually explain his life, but also some of the work, including one of the Pietà, the last Pietà that is held by the museum in Florence. We have done the same with the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence for the David. And then we also had a commission from the city of Genoa to create the digital twin of Christopher Columbus so that he can answer to the accusation of genocide that he has been, dealing with.
A little off topic, but I'm curious, what was digital twin Christopher Columbus's stance and perspective on that question of genocide? How did he defend himself or present himself in his work?
So Christopher Columbus is a delicate matter. He never denies responsibilities. He was on the first mission. He was driving he was sailing the boat. He was a captain. There were no soldiers on board. Doctors to take care of the crew. Eventually, later in his life, he was appointed with a military responsibility, and he carried the soldiers. But he was not necessarily part of giving the orders of any genocide approach, right? But he was aware, eventually later in life, of what was happening. So the city of Genoa took a knowledge-based approach where we don't deny what happened, but we try to frame this within the circumstances of that time, okay?
Yeah.
So there is now a denial, but there is also trying to educate people what the circumstances are and how you have to look at those circumstances.
So a city took a man 5 centuries gone, built a version of him, and decided what he would and would not concede. Hold on to that thought, as the question of who controls the model of a person deceased is going to come back and it won't stay in the museum. But with that asterisk aside, Francesco and Natalie are describing a pretty optimistic view of digital twins. The twin adds leverage, a version of you that scales. And I was curious, just how twinny can this get? If a twin is a model of a person, how complete can it be? To briefly dip our toe in the sci-fi waters, could our brains be mapped to a digital twin? 2 people are well placed to answer. First, a neuroscientist who builds models of actual brains for living, and then a psychologist who studies what these twins do to the people who make them. Let's start with the brain.
If you build a model that has all of the experience and information that you have, or I have, is that model then a perfect replica of you? Is it conscious, for instance, things of that sort?
This is Randy McIntosh, director of SFU's Institute for Neuroscience and Neurotechnology. He builds computational models of the human brain. If anyone can say whether you can one day upload a whole person, it's the guy who models brains for a living.
My feeling is no. We're not going to get to that point. There's an important difference between how you and I and other people have grown up compared to how an AI would grow up. And one of the things is that that experience, that biological grounding, if you will, that it's hard to put that into an AI, that there are biological needs for us, eating, homeostasis. I don't want to get too technical, but all these other aspects affect how the body as a whole develops. And that's the hard part to capture in AI models. It might be possible at some point, but I think it's called the context dependency issue. And that's very popular in what's called dynamical systems modeling. Like the butterfly effect is an example of dynamical systems modeling, where small changes can result in huge effects. And that's true for the brain and for the body. And that's really, really difficult to capture in a model. You can sort of capture it in some simplified ones, but if you talk about something like a human,
Yeah.
we got evolutionary time, plus you've got your own time to try and factor in for that. So it's not, you'll get pieces of it, but I'm not sure it's going to be to the level you might see in like Star Trek or something like that. There's some great stuff in popular press from like Anil Seth, for example, has a really good essay that he just published recently. He talks about this consciousness in AI and talks about that biological aspect that makes making a perfect replica of a person in a computer extremely difficult.
So Randy's ceiling, if you will, is biological. Elaine Casket, a cyberpsychologist, draws a different line, and hers has nothing to do with what the machine can or can't do. It's about what we lose by building one.
I like being just me and completely accountable, because those digital twins, ultimately, being machines, they're not accountable in the way that you can be accountable as a human being to whatever work that is, or whatever thoughts they have, or whatever they say. The difference between you and a digital twin, and why you will never be a complete twin, is that you've got that consciousness and you've got that accountability.
So the twin runs into at least two walls. One is the brain. You can't really compute a whole person. The other is more philosophical, the self. A machine can't carry the thing that makes you accountable for it. But here's what should maybe keep you up at night. Neither wall stops the twin from being useful, and neither stops it from being built. So it's worth being precise about what a twin actually is, because there are kind of two of them. There's the data you hand over, your writing, your voice, the recorded conversations. And then there's what the model inferred from all of it, your patterns, your habits, your blind spots, the essence that marketing keeps promising. Now, you can call them the raw layer and the inferred layer. Put the two together, and a twin is the most complete model of a person really ever attempted, in a sense. But the wild thing is that there is almost no legal framework for any of this, only tons of challenges and open questions.
The first challenge revolves around the fact that we have so many versions of different digital AI-powered replicas.
This is Paul Yurchis. He's an attorney, intellectual property, data, privacy, AI, and a co-founder of Prifina, a personal data company. He's also a visiting scholar at Berkeley Law. And Paul has built a twin of himself, and he'll tell you the law is nowhere near ready for it.
We have synthetic beings that are not attached to an individual, so new types of digital, let's say, beings. Then we have digital replicas of people who are alive and famous, people who are famous but no longer among us, dead bots. So there are many issues revolving even around the terminology. As lawyers, policymakers, we do not really have a consensus in terms of how to define these new forms of life. And of course, these new forms of synthetic life, they are going to be part of probably more tangible, robotic versions of digital twins. Again, we need to come up with a consensus about terminology, how to define them. And then the next question is, how do we position those new types of life forms within the legal framework? Is it an extension of an individual? Is it a separate being? In what instances it is an extension individual? And who gets to control the launch of those new types of AI replicas? Who gets to control them, and who gets to decide the fate? And the biggest untold story is the data that powers those new digital life forms.
Now, this can get pretty dense and weedy pretty quick. So Paul loves to use a metaphor for all of this, and it's a good one.
I will just dive straight into the analogy of Ghost and the Shell. Many of us have heard and seen movies and read animes of Ghost in the Shell. I think this is a perfect metaphor to describe the reality that underpins digital twins. So until today, let's say legal regulatory framework has been oriented around governing and probably regulating the established framework of how data moves. So cloud infrastructure, telecoms, access rights. So we can call this a shell, right? And when we talk about digital twins, again, there are so many companies that are making different technological infrastructures to create a shell for a digital twin. Maybe one is more replica of voice, the other one is a combination of voice and knowledge, and maybe even a visual representation. What has been missing and is missing from the legal regulatory policy perspective is this understanding that we need a new social contract, we need new rules to determine what happens with the data that powers those twins. And the fascinating part is that we can create countless number of empty shells, right? But we don't really have enough data to fill the shell with to animate those digital replicas. So when we talk about this distinction between the shell, the infrastructure, and the data, we don't have rules that governs data, especially when it comes to personal data that is needed to animate digital replicas of people.
Sit for a moment with what Paul just said, because it reframes the whole problem. The law guards the shell. It has almost nothing to say about the ghost, because ghosts are new. This is a new territory. The ghost, the data that animates the twin, the thing built out of you is the part that's actually you, which means the word we've been using is, in a sense, is wrong. We're saying own. Who owns this? Who owns the twin? Who owns the data? But you don't own a ghost the way you own a file. I mean, you kind of do, but a file is property. You hold it, you copy it, you move it across the street, you delete it. The ghost, in a way, doesn't work like that. It can't move itself. Someone decides for it, but it can also do things. It might have some agency. It can be handed off, locked away, fought over, switched off. So maybe the right framing is not ownership, but custody. Who has custody of the model of you? I'll confess I still wasn't clear on even the basics of what the law said. So I asked Paul a very basic question. What does the law say right now, if there is consensus, on who owns your digital self? Right? So if I create a digital twin in one of the mainstream, who owns that?
I think, let's say, the most easy answer to say is that there is no answer, or it depends whom we ask. We have rules that govern different aspects of digital personality. So there are some rules that govern, let's say, libel and slander. There are rules that govern, let's say, misappropriation of personal data. Then there is a set of rules that governs protection of data. So there are these bits and fragments in the laws that have been created in the previous generation of technology that was more related to, let's say, mechanical reproduction. But now when we have this multimodal possibility to accelerate and consolidate all kinds of data to build digital twins, we do not really have a comprehensive framework that would actually catch the essence of digital twin, digital replicas. So I guess we have limited regulatory frameworks that could help find the limited temporal solutions, but we do not have a holistic approach to this new social phenomenon.
Am I, on a very basic level, am I right that in theory, like, I own my data, you own your data, listeners own their data, and if a data is what is powering these digital twins, shouldn't the law say that you own your digital twin if you own the data that is creating these twins? Is it, why is it not that simple? What are the complicating factors there?
Yes. So first of all, if you talk to most of the lawyers, most of the legal experts will not agree with the statement that people own their data. Maybe it's a social phenomenon. We feel that we should own our personal data, but legally it has not been established. And actually, during the period of negotiation, the GDPR, European General Data Privacy Regulation, there was a big debate. Is there any possibility for data ownership? And a number of reasons led to the general consensus that there is no viable argument to make a personal data type of a property asset because it's intangible. It's also not clearly defined. We cannot say what data we're talking exactly about. So it was generally agreed that data ownership concept should be dismissed.
So according to Paul, it's not clear if you own your data, which leaves the real question. If you don't have a clear claim, who does? Dr. Elaine Casket, a cyber psychologist who studies how technology reshapes the way we live, work, and hold on to sense of ourselves, well, she has a blunt answer.
I think that oftentimes the answer to who's got the biggest case for ownership is probably the platform on which you create it, on which these things are stored, because they're the gatekeepers, they're the people who've got this thing. And, access is 9/10 of the law, and, they're the ones who, kind of really can control the kind of the spread or the kind of storage of this thing. So I kind of feel like you might be the creator of it. It might be a mirror, it might be a twin of you, but in the eyes of whatever emergent law we're talking about, I don't think you've got as much of a claim on ownership as the actual platform does.
That's custody answered from the outside, by law, by access, by whoever's holding the servers. Elaine's second point turns inward.
I think that part of the thinning and part of the dehumanization is it's like the dehumanization that we are inflicting upon ourselves when we even kind of get the idea of creating digital twins and replicating ourselves to distribute ourselves out throughout the world, doing all this kind of stuff. And I'll tell you why. It's because we're almost treating, I talked about data mining a minute ago. It's like we're treating ourselves as just this resource to be mined or to kind of replicated or to try to kind of drain as much value of ourselves, out of our capacities or whatever service that we're offering. It kind of feels like we're treating ourselves like the whole system is treating us, right? That kind of extractive, squeeze as much value out of, just treat this person as a resource to be mined or moved around or, just exploited or extracted to the max. It's almost like the kind of creation and farming out of digital twins kind of feels like really succumbing to that whole psychology of, optimization and maximization and efficiency. And let me see how much value can I extract from this.
And the way Elaine sees it, there's almost a dehumanization that's wrapped up in the question of data rights and data portability.
There's a kind of dehumanization a process in that, so that when I think about this kind of personal, very reflective of me data, and I think about data portability, which is what you're talking about, this right to take from this platform and say, no, I'm going to take me and my data and go somewhere else. I think data rights are human rights. I think that, human rights and identity rights and data rights should all go together because our data is so personal and resonant and should be, in my view, protected. That it's almost like it's like a facet. It should be a facet of our personality rights or our human rights, which is not right now. It doesn't have that status. And I feel like if our data were recognized as kind of being a dimension or a portion of our personality rights, then kind of the right to data portability would follow on from that. You see what I mean? But still kind of regarded as something separate from us or something that somebody else can own, even though it is all about us.
Now, to editorialize for a moment, I fully agree. I agree with Elaine that data rights should be human rights. But the reality is, whether that's right or wrong, good or bad, the reality is often vendor lock-in is a real thing.
So vendor lock-in is always a commercial and also it's a commercial and non-commercial problem, right? So once you put all your eggs in one basket, you depend from that basket decisions, right? Mm-hmm. If they change rates, if they change policies, if they migrate your information somewhere else, if someone breaks into the system and take those information, if the system itself use the information to train and then leak information itself, right? So those are all dangers of broader language models. My perspective is that in the Silicon Valley, money doesn't matter. What matters is data. So very successful companies do not worry about money. They can afford not to make money for a long time. But what they do, they focus on protecting data. And that's why sometimes you have to choose the least of the evil. You might have a little bit less performance when you use an open source language model, or a little bit more work to set it up right, but you have a little bit more control, and you don't suffer necessarily vendors lock-in. Because once you're locked into a vendor, economically can impact you, but also you can lose control to a certain extent of your own IP. And then if someone wants to do something outside of that framework or that basket, you might be stuck where you are.
So as Francesco says, you are locked in the basket. That's the cost of renting your twin instead of holding it. You live by the basket's rules and you stay. But so far, all of these digital twin questions are about you while you are alive. I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you are alive. What about the twins of the dead, the digital ghosts? Now, last season, we did a whole episode on digital ghosts, but here we want to focus more narrowly on the rights of the digital dead, the agency. And for that, we go back to Julia Crete, who notes that Facebook, TikTok, and the like tend to do whatever they want with data.
When you upload anything to those sites take proprietary ownership of it. Now, you still own the information, but so do they. Right? Proprietary rights means that they can do whatever they want with it. You have given them permission to do whatever they want with it. So if Facebook all of a sudden decided that it wanted to start making death bots or, making a digital twin.
I love that phrase, death bots. Yes, please. You need to trademark that right away, Julia.
Oh, no, that's not me. That's the death tech industry. No. Death bots have been around for probably 10 years now, but they started as only conversation, as you would interact with ChatGPT, right?
Yes.
That's how they started. They were early forms of AI. And they were built mostly by people who had lost people that they were deeply, deeply attached to. And they wanted to keep having conversations with them. And so that's how they developed these bots that would talk in the manner of the people who had died. They had enough digital information about them, right? They had either recorded conversations, or they had all their text messages, or they had enough information that they could pattern those conversations.
Right. What I think is super interesting, on top of all that, is we're now, of course, in the quote agentic era, right? Every company is working on building their AI agents workflows. There are millions of people who are experimenting as we speak with AI agents that are at times, they have clever systems where they are running around the clock. Their agents doing things for them. It's very easy to imagine a scenario, and I'm sure there are folks already doing it, already building this, tinkering with the agent's version of a death bot, right? Where you have so it's not just a human being can interact with old deceased grandpa, but there's a grandpa agent, right? That actually has some degree of autonomy that can potentially imagine there's grandpa's reacting to the news, and grandpa writes, grandpa's like, oh, I can't believe it could be as innocuous as, I can't believe the Mets lost 7 games in a row again. And grandpa, and his little video message from grandpa cursing the sky at the Mets losing, right? And so, but then that's kind of the humorous one. Is there a version of grandpa acting in accordance of what we think grandpa would do? Of there's some lawsuit grandpa wants to file about he feels aggrieved or whatever, right? Could they be buying things? Could grandpa, interact with the world as an agent, right? And that all kind of, that's the underpinning of all of that is data of what's feeding into grandpa's proclivities, grandpa's likes and dislikes, To what extent is grandpa litigious? Was grandpa going to be making a rant online that might be libel and might, can grandpa be sued? Like, these are crazy questions. I don't really know what the framework is for answering these questions. I know I just gave you a lot, but any thoughts to all of that?
There are no guardrails.
Yeah.
There are no guardrails. No government has come up with, again, the European Union has stronger protections, but in North America, nobody's constraining the tech companies from using the data of the dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, Facebook they developed a legacy policy. You can make somebody your legacy contact, right? And that person, if you tell Facebook, okay, this person has died, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you become the legacy contact, and you can kind of control what happens to the profile. Like, the profile becomes frozen in a way that people can't. It wouldn't be possible then to reanimate that person, because Facebook would know, okay, that user has died.
Yeah.
But unless you tell Facebook that a user has died, the algorithm has no way of knowing, which is how you keep getting birthday notices.
Yeah.
For people who have, your friends who have died. I don't know if you've had that experience, but
I have.
But it's weird, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very simple example of an algorithm that's going to keep producing interaction with you, because it's not the dead who hold, the economic. They're not the economic engine. You're the economic engine. You're the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those things are designed to keep you interacting with the data of the dead.
So the platform decides, not the dead, not the family, the platform by default. And the default, well, is to keep the lights on, which leaves exactly one lever, the one you pull yourself before you go. And people are starting to pull it.
So people are now putting digital legacy clauses into their wills. So Robin Williams, interestingly enough, was one of the first people to do this. And he died well before any of the, the idea of the death bot, or really the AI agent or anything like that. But he put in his will that he did not want his image used after death.
Yeah.
Whereas other actors, we're seeing
Val Kilmer, right? Recently, is like the last couple of weeks, Val Kilmer's estate was like excited to use Val Kilmer's digital likeness to be in a role of a movie after his death. The family said this is tasteful and great, but it's, to what extent does the person who died have a say in that? I think it's still up in the air.
You have to have a digital will now. You have to be explicit in your will. And there are companies who are in the death tech industry who are also doing digital wills, right? Because you have to be explicit about whether or not you want to be reproduced in any fashion after your death.
Yeah.
It's changing the afterlife.
Wow.
It's changing our afterlives.
Now, a somewhat more optimistic take is Paul Yurchis, the attorney. While it's true he thinks we need a new social contract for how to handle all of this, he also says when it comes to kind of actual specific use cases and examples, we tend to have a way to figure it out.
Afterlife digital twins are fascinating, and they catch so much of public attention. I guess a starting point could really revolve around existing estate inheritance rules that probably could be extended from financial assets to also digital representations of an individual. There are instances where people would actually give permission or even mandate to do something with their, let's say, remaining assets, including replicated voice clone. So in that case, probably there is already ex ante consent by a person who passes away. we have some examples from actors and actresses from the, let's say, entertainment domain. In some instances, of course, if the twin has been created and the person passes away, I guess the same framework as we handle financial assets and accounts could be extended to digital replicas. So we probably don't need to innovate the wheel.
What's a specific use case you find super useful to like help give a clarity on who should own this?
Well, I think for me, really, if I created a digital replica of my knowledge with my previous company, I have consolidated all of my data. It lives in my personal data container. And while I'm alive, I still have access to this digital account, right? My digital portfolio. The same case happens with 11 Labs, let's say, or any other digital replica file. So if I pass away tomorrow, probably my wife should be able to approach 11 Labs or a personal AI company and say, well, this was my family member. Now I'm a legitimate person to, let's say, inherit the assets. And this is part of the asset, part of the person's estate. So I don't think there is any new rule needed, but we haven't had precedent yet, right? There haven't been many cases.
Now back to Julia with the simplest version of all of this.
All of us should think about what's going to happen to our data after we die. And when people ask me, what are you working on? I do this documentary about what happens to our data after we die. And to a person, they just stop. It doesn't matter what age. And they say, wow, I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
So the first thing is we got to think about it.
So up to this point, the honest answer to who has custody of the model of you has mostly been probably not you, the platform, the contract, whoever's holding the servers. So this last stretch is about the people building a different answer, a twin you'd actually have custody of definitively. Now, no company has it fully solved. What there is a principle, your twin and the data under it sitting somewhere you control, not inside one company's walls. Francesco Rulli has a name for it.
We created this concept of AHI, artificial with a small a, human with a big H, and intelligence with a big I. Because if you want to preserve your eyes, that is intelligence, information, and intellectual as intellectual property, you have to make sure that the human is in charge. Because if you let the AI to be in charge of your eyes, then who owns the artificial intelligence will actually control your IP, your information, and you're in big trouble. That's why our studio was created to put the human in charge. It's almost reversing a self-driving car and saying you have to have your hands on the steering wheel.
Now he quickly turns from the philosophy to the machinery.
So we have a router that allows us, within the same digital twin, to use one or multiple knowledge bases, but also to use one or multiple language models. And sometimes we talk to the client to not use language models and just to use a deterministic system or reverse back to natural language understanding. Because sometimes less is more. You avoid hallucinations, you avoid also long-term misunderstandings, and at the same time, you're protecting your IP very carefully.
That's one way to build it. Natalie Mombiat has another. And on data portability, she's largely bullish.
These days, however, in the kind of post-ChatGPT, this sort of like LLM era, there's a lot more, as I explained, to what a digital twin is. And that includes, like what you were just saying, all that data, the personality, the richness, and all of that. And actually, that is quite portable. I don't know if you got targeted in the most brilliant switching campaign I've ever seen with Anthropic, basically saying, we've just made it really, really easy for you to take your data, export your data from other LLM platforms and bring it to Claude, right? So like, it actually is, the data itself is actually very portable and packageable. I would say that something that is left behind is the hard work that you spent tuning it to the features of that platform, right? So let's say if you were heavily using skills in Claude, right? Like you'd have the data and you'd be able to extract the data and move it, but you wouldn't have the data together with the feature that made it really useful, in this case, skills. And so you would lose something in that migration. So what's a way to, so anyway, so like to summarize that, it is actually easier to own and, port your data than it was previously. But there are some caveats. I'd say these days, and obviously it depends if you're like a single, an enterprise user that's, willing to do this, but I think a good solve for enterprise users who do really want to own the product and do want maximum flexibility is you can build your own front end and own your product and tune it to exactly how you want, to the use case that you want, update guardrails in real time, make it really usable for you and your customer, your user, your employees. And then in the back end, you're using a few, the infrastructure or like the cognition engines, if you want to call it that, from different providers, whether that be Anthropic, OpenAI, 11 Labs, HeyGen, or whoever they are. And then because you kind of created your own sort of architecture, you can, and you're still reliant on some of these platforms, but you have the ability to swap them in. And you own the front end and the product and the experience.
So the data moves now, kind of. But the catch, you can carry the raw layer out and leave the inferred layer behind. Randy McIntosh, the neuroscientist from earlier, makes the case plainly. When your data is locked in, AI has to break in to get it. When it's open by default, nobody has to. And he's seen both.
The individual, of course, should have some control over how our data are used and be able to take it between different sites to use to get a second opinion, for example, or even to be able to try it in a new platform. So that's just sort of the nature of data sovereignty and data ownership, that if you have your data, you should be able to put it wherever you want.
Randy argues that data portability is better for AI development itself, especially when it's open.
For better, for worse, a lot of the mantra around AI is that we need more data. So if we just have more data, everything will be fine. It's not necessarily true, but I think that idea is still there. And so making the accessibility of data as easy as possible actually builds a somewhat better relationship with both the tech companies, but also the researchers, in the sense that instead of having to figure out how to get around the door to access data without telling anybody, and this is a lot of the problems we've seen right now with AI technology, they find it sort of burrows a hole through firewalls to grab data that may not be necessarily open. But if it's actually part of the way the data are structured so that it's by nature is open, that makes that data collection and consolidation piece much easier, so that you can train more sensitive models that are sensitive to different age groups, sensitive to different sexes, that are different ethnicities, different geographies.
And as we wind down, data aside, Natalie kind of addresses one of the even more basic questions, like what is the point of all of this? Are digital twins even a good idea? Here's how Natalie sees it. The users of twins have a choice: agency or atrophy.
I hope that people will use it to create more agency for themselves, right? So to use it to outsource busy work, to outsource stuff that sort of weighs them down and frees them to do work that is more human, more meaningful, more relationship-oriented, that helps them exercise their own human ingenuity. So to basically offload to create this space for really human things. This is a human problem versus a technology problem.
Yeah.
And I think the converse is, and as we've seen from certain studies, like one from the MIT Media Lab last year that kind of went viral, was when we over rely on LLMs, we basically cognitively atrophy, right? So the same thing can apply to a digital twin. If you're having the digital twin, like over relying on your digital twin and not doing the thinking and the work for yourself, then you are sort of like, you're not freeing yourself in any sort of way. You're kind of like succumbing to, the limitations of your identity around a digital twin. So all of that's to say, I think the future could look a couple of different ways, and it's probably going to be a combination of the two, where some people are using these technologies to create more agency for themselves, and some are basically kind of using it to outsource stuff that feels difficult and then find themselves with less agency. So obviously I'm gunning for the more hopeful and optimistic one.
Agency or atrophy? Natalie's fork comes down to a question we started with and never close: whether the model of you is something you hold or something that holds you. And that's going to do it for this episode of The People's AI, presented by Vana. I'm your host, Jeff Wilser. Thank you to today's guests, Julia Crete, Natalie Mombiat, Francesco Rulli, Randy McIntosh, Paul Yurchis, and Elaine Caskets. And thank you again to my partner, the Vana Foundation. Vana is supporting the creation of a new internet, one rooted in data sovereignty, user ownership, and data portability. Their mission is to create a decentralized data ecosystem where individuals, not corporations, govern their own data and share the value it creates. Learn more at vana.org. Our theme music is by Bradford Craig, researched by Kate Morgan, produced by Jasper Chua, who also handles our sound design, music editing, and the videos on YouTube. If this one made you think, please send it to someone, send to your digital twin, have them send to their twins, subscribe wherever you're listening. Thanks again, and see you next time.